Hi there, welcome to Point of View. I'm Mark Leishman, and
The more I watch it, the more nervous I became.
New Zealand,
So I grew up in
industry.
Auckland.
I'm in the food industry, so great heart in life.
It's a hard ask to put that production to a level.
hello there, and welcome to Point of View. I'm Mark Leishman, and this is our usual Friday night fare, and looking forward to this immensely tonight. Our program features succession planning, a very difficult area of agribusiness, and it's unique to everyone with a no one-size-fits-all approach to it. And my guest is Matthew Pickering, and he's a rural coach and has a strong rural and sporting background. He's worked with a wide cross-section of agri and business groups, sporting teams, students and community organisations. Now he works in this field of succession planning. His aim is to lead others to be clear about what matters most, their goals, and then to help them develop practical plans and implement them. So Matthew, welcome to the program, to Point of View. And what a big job.
Thank you, Mark.
What is the key focus in your farm succession work?
Well, key thing is helping the families get real clean and clear about what matters most. You begin with the end in mind, and it's not something that comes naturally to rural families. With a whole lot of stuff going on a day-to-day basis, dealing with the crisis or the operational things, often takes precedence to actually sitting down, taking the time and thinking big picture. What do I want to have? What do I want to be doing? Who do we want to become in 5, 10, 15 years' time?
And this is happening. It seems it's more important these days. In the old days, of course, the father would normally give the farm to the first or the eldest firstborn or eldest son generally, and that was it, done and dusted.
Yeah, and the replications of those sorts of things continue today.
So your background as such, I mean, how did you come to this point?
Oh, real banking background with ANZ National for 21 years. Ended up as a regional manager, North Island, sort of Taranaki North. Loved working with the farmers, loved working with the people, and yeah, I was quite inquisitive to know what I could do outside the bank with what I'd learned inside the bank. It's a wonderful training ground, good people, good processes, and so bit the bullet and made a big change in late 2007.
Straight into the sort of succession planning, or did it sort of...
Oh no, I went out on my own to start with, I was full of everything, but after 6 months I got lonely. And decided, who else is out there? There's like-minded I can work with. Yeah. So I paired up with some other people who had...
And have you sort of developed a process? Or?
Yeah, I did a lot. So I started working with a few farming families in Canterbury, and they were interested in this. So I did a lot of research and picked up on what happened in Canada, and particularly in the Ontario state. And they'd invested millions of dollars in developing succession planning processes to help their rural industry who were going through some massive change. And so I picked up on that and sort of brought that back here and pulled out a process. It's not a linear process, no one size fits all, everyone's different, but it gave us a foundation to say, okay, how do we actually approach this complicated and highly emotional at times, but also rewarding challenge and opportunity that farmers are facing.
So where do you see the rural community is now when it comes to succession planning? Are we getting better at it, or is it?
The understanding of what succession planning is and why it's important continues to improve and increase. What people are doing about it, it's sort of two parts to it. Yeah, without being too dramatic, I see a big train wreck coming. Because there's a whole lot of 65 plus farm owners who have not started a conversation with their families. And one day something happens where they can no longer do it. And when they turn to their siblings and say, right, who wants to farm this? And they're in their late 30s, 40s, pushing 50 at times, and they've already established their family and their roots, and sorry, mum and dad, not me.
Advice.
And so if that mum and dad can't do it, their choices are limited.
And then, of course, probably the farm gets sold, and that's a very stressful time in itself.
Yeah, and without the planning by mum and dad, mums tend to have more involvement and more options about what they do past farming. Dads have done that all their lives, 24/7. And if there hasn't been some preparation over time, then if that's taken away from them, well, it's a pretty sad state what happens.
So what generally, stops people getting into this? I mean, you'd think it'd be something that would almost be going right through your career, thinking, well, who's coming next? What's going to happen next?
Not knowing where to start. Yes, what succession planning is, why it's important, but how do I start? There's plenty of seminars out there dealing with the first two. And then at the end of the seminar, I've been to them, the clients say, well, how do I start? And everyone sort of looks over their shoulder and looks around. So it's how do you start having this conversation about emotive things and relationships?
And how do you? What's the best way?
Well, what we found works is spending some preparation questions, 2 pages of questions go out. Farmers get this thing their thought processes going as to what's important to themselves and also what their thoughts are about the business. Plus also we look at the values of the mum and dad, do some work on that because that's the core of it. And so spend a good half day with them and then work the same thing with the children and their partners. So you get all that stuff out on the table, share it round and then bring them together.
So initially you would start with the couple, the patriarch and matriarch, and then see what they wanted to do, and then you bring in the other family members.
Yeah, and then work with the other family members individually with their partners.
Does it work? I mean, can the patriarch, as in the old days, just say, well, this is the way I want it, and I'll...
Yeah, and there's a place for that too, because mum and dad, what we're dealing with is their life's work.
Yes.
Yeah, they've spent 40, 50 years probably starting with nothing, working through some incredibly tough, difficult times, probably at some stage in their life lost everything and recovered again. So they've built this up, so they've got every right to say, this is what I want to have, this is what I want to be doing.
So then it's a question of bringing all the other family members into the party and then trying to make it happen.
Yeah, and the beauty of that is I'm no longer surprised what the children bring to the table because they're very globally aware, very well connected, very educated, experienced a lot of things, and so they have a lot to offer. If mum and dad open the door up and let them contribute.
And of course, different strokes for different folks. We're all different, so some do and some don't, I guess.
And what mum and dad contribute, or what the children can contribute, can produce something so much better than even mum and dad envisaged.
So what can you do for that scenario we mentioned before where, dad's well into his 60s and mum, and the kids are into their 40s or 50s. As you say, they've established their own lives. What is this? Is the only thing you can do sell the farm? And
no, not necessarily. Because succession, there's 2 components to it, or there's 2 ways of looking at it. And I asked mum and dad, what's your time frame for succession? Is it to the next generation, or is it for future generations? And that little S on the end of generation takes them down a different pathway.
Yeah. So some of these farms obviously have been intergenerational, haven't they? Been around for 2 or 3 or 4, possibly.
One yesterday.
So the thought of giving it up and losing the whole thing is awful, isn't it?
Yeah, one I was with yesterday, it started in 1927 with their grandparents. And their view is future generations. 5 daughters, what do we do?
And of course, you mentioned globally before, a lot of people are living overseas or whatever. So how do you bring them in on the discussion?
Well, running the family business, and these have grown. They could be 10, 20, 30, $50 million businesses now.
2 or 3 farms.
Yeah, exactly. So mum and dad have created that and they've learnt along the way. So you look at the different parts of it, there's the shareholding aspects, there's the governance, the direction side, there's the management, and then there's the labour doing the work. So what skills do family members have and what part would they like to play in this business? Because it's not just going out, getting the cows in or mustering the sheep.
And as you say, these businesses, they're worth a hell of a lot of money, as opposed to 40 years ago where they're worth thousands or hundreds of thousands. Now it's millions, isn't it?
So having this conversation is very warranted.
Yeah, absolutely. So what is the trigger? Is there a trigger for people putting their hand up and saying, right, we need help?
2 aspects. One is the gains that people can see. So those proactive couples who are future orientated, thinking ahead strategically, they come to us either through referral from whoever, or their mates or the bankers or whatever, and they'll say, look, we want to start. Let's talk about that. And so we're underway, they are willing. And the other part is, sadly, a crisis.
Yes.
A death, incapacitation, loss in the family. Someone in the district's had a horrific experience around succession. I had one family where the dad had just spent 10 years in the courts with his 3 sisters because the dad gave him the farm. Yeah, so that was a reason to say, quick, I don't want that to happen, to replicate it, let's get involved. So crisis could be the other part.
So, your company is Approach Rural.
Yeah, Rural Coach.
Rural Coach, Approach Rural Coach, Coach Limited. And people can literally give you a call or just come in and just start the process.
We've got 10 of us around the country, so we're more than happy to come out and have an introductory, complimentary conversation for a couple of hours, just through that. Yeah, we've got to be able to get on with each other.
To start, you know, as you said before, I think you begin with the end in mind.
Yeah, so we use flip charts. We go back to those sorts of things and coloured pens. When we ask Mum and Dad who would like to write, invariably pen gets passed to Mum, but that's okay. We still get stuff out of Dad's head. And so, yeah, we start brainstorming that into a template for us, ourselves, for our family and for the business.
And you're guiding the process, are you, essentially?
Asking the questions. Yep. So they've got all the stuff up here. It's about getting it down on the paper so they can then work with it.
So where did most start? Where did they? Basically by making the phone call or getting you around. That's where it begins.
Yep, so we have a conversation with them, talk about how the process would look going forward. And then a good place to start is when will you have all the children together next? That might be 6 months' time. So, okay, so there's the first family meeting. Now let's backfill it with when you have the one-on-ones. Because you don't want to do all the one-on-ones 6 months out, because by the time you get the family meeting, it's all stale and gone. So you do that sort of 2-3 weeks out.
And does most often the case what the parents wish for generally happen, or
invariably up front they possibly don't really know what they want to happen. They've got a good clear big picture stuff, but the specifics may not be there. The specifics of the family name stays on the letterbox through the next generations. That sort of thing is important. Fairness, they talk about fairness, being fair to all children. There's two sides of that. Children got to feel they're being treated fairly as well, but Mum and Dad playing their part, so there's the fairness aspect. There's the continuity to support next generations into achieving what's important to them, which may not be farming.
And when you say fairness, does that generally come down to dollars and cents?
Well, 2 words is fairness and equity. You could view equity as equal dollars. Fairness brings in the other components of support, unconditional love, babysitting, education, mentoring, guidance, those sorts of things. And how do you put a value on those? Well, you can't.
Fascinating subject, isn't it? It's amazing. And Matthew Pickering, my special guest from Approach Rural Coaching Limited, and we'll have more from Matthew. We'll continue our discussion right after the break. This is Point of View. I'm Mark Leishman. We'll see you shortly. Welcome back. You're watching Point of View. I'm Mark Leishman, and my special guest tonight, fascinating topic of succession planning, Matthew Pickering from Coach Approach Rural Limited, which is a nationwide company, and that's their aim, to look after people and guide them through the process. Now, you mentioned, Matthew, in the first part, you can see a train wreck or a series of train wrecks coming. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Certainly the train wrecks around those not doing anything proactive about it, and therefore their choices are limited. But at the other end of this spectrum there's a lot of good things happening with some farming families who are actually proactively working through this stuff.
So, that leads to a very good question. When is the best time to start this process?
2 times that I would see. Firstly, when all family members are willing to participate. And so age is not a barrier or a condition in that situation. Ideally, if it was a perfect world, I'd say start while your children are in their mid-20s. At that stage, they have had their education, they've gone out, they've experienced some things in life, they've got to realise that they're not the best thing that's happened to this world. They've had a few bosses, some good ones and bad ones, they understand what leadership and relationships and teamwork is about, what works, what doesn't. And they're starting to find what they're good at, what their strengths are, and how they can use those going forward. So they're starting to mould their thoughts about where they go, because the beauty of that is then when Mum and Dad start talking about the family farm, they can start looking in and saying, okay, is there a part in there for us?
Probably at points they've never even thought. They probably had gone off and done their uni and done other careers and thought, well, I've got no link to the farm anymore, but obviously their experience can be used in the farm.
Yeah, an example of that is a 26-year-old daughter working for Fonterra in marketing in Tokyo a number of years ago now, and magnificent strategic brain on her and that sort of thinking. And so the son on the farm engaged her to help him with that strategic directional type thinking. Yeah.
So she felt she was part of the process and was a major part of the process. Yeah.
The other part about that, starting at that time, is Mum and Dad are in their 50s, early 50s. Yeah. They've still got 10 good, perhaps physical years with them, so that they can migrate through as the children step up if they want to.
Yeah, and the kids can become more involved possibly at an earlier age, which is again beneficial, isn't it?
So the mum and dad with their wisdom,
Yep.
leveraging the energy, the youth, the enthusiasm, the vibrancy, the connectedness that the next generation bring. When you can combine those two things in a family situation where you've got the bloodlines working together, you can achieve so much more than potentially non-bloodlines. The flip of that though is if you don't do it well and you stuff it up, then in bloodlines you've got more to lose because you lose the family relationships as well.
Is that a major complication? You know, the son-in-laws and daughter-in-laws.
Yeah, it's a factor that needs to be considered because they need a voice. They have a voice. They've got to be considered because when the son or the daughter goes home at night, who do they talk to?
And you know, most farms are partnerships, aren't they? It's an equal partnership, effectively, isn't it? What goes on? So you know, I always understood that lawyers and perhaps accountants would do this sort of work, but you've got a background in banking. So what makes you different?
So yes, the lawyers, the bankers, the consultants, the accountants, they have a very valuable part to play. They've got expertise that needs to be brought to bear in this whole process. We don't do all that stuff. We're not expertise in that area. We use the coaching skills of leadership to facilitate the family members to get clear about where they want to get to, the vision, those sorts of things, and some key strategies. And then with that information known, take that to the accountants, solicitors and the bankers, and then they are better positioned to be able to use their expertise to get a better result than perhaps if they didn't know that bigger picture stuff.
So I imagine, this process where it begins with you guys coming into the family and discussing it could take several years before you actually get to a point where you can actually start really sitting down and saying, right, this is what's going to happen. Yeah,
it could do. I've had some issues where it took 2 years to work through to get the relationships on an even keel because there's some real conflict going on between some of the children.
So the history going back years.
Yeah, and assumptions, turning into resentment and then conflict. And with that resolved, then can move forward. If we look at working with a farming family down south, 2012 I started working with them. We're up to the 8th family meeting at the end of this month. And they are making some very good progress along the pathway.
But you still haven't reached the point where you've gone to the lawyer to sign it all up.
The lawyer's been involved in that. The accountant have been involved at various family meetings doing different things with different parts of the family. There's some complexity there.
And you sort of can bring in psychologists and people like that?
Well, if there's a need there, because we're not psychologists or counsellors, which is dealing with some
whoever the expert is required for a particular scenario.
So you could say we're the conductor and it's us to identify where the needs are and help them work out where they need to go to get that.
Absolutely. So, I mean, let's look at the cost of not getting it right. What is that?
Clean sheet of paper with a farming couple to start with. Left-hand side, we can say, okay, where are you at now with your family and your business and your succession process? And at the right-hand side, how would you like it to be if you nailed it? And they'll come up with a whole list of things around profitable business, growing, doing what we want, children are happy, family unity, good relationships, those sorts of things.
Maintaining traditions, all that sort of stuff.
So the question we asked them was, if you could only have one of those things, what would it be? Invariably, they always come up with family unity and harmony. So the question for that says, well, put a value on it. And they can't because they say it's priceless. Now flip it round and then ask them the question, well, what's the cost of not having family unity? And it's everything. So when they see that in that emotional sense, then, well, that's massive. So how much time is that family prepared to invest and how much energy and a few dollars are they prepared to invest to work through a process that will give them a better chance of retaining that family unity into the next.
And the value of getting it right, I suppose what you've said, it's priceless.
Yeah. And mum and dad can say, sit back content and say, our job's done. We've set up the children, we've created something, it's helping them go forward for the next generation and future ones.
So what is it that the succession planning actually deals with?
It deals with that visionary piece, where they want to be, what's important, what they want to have. So some vision there's some purpose, there's some values around the family, and then it's identifying the strategies. One of those strategies will be succession planning. So that's the route that we go down. Yes, there'll be strategies around governance, about growth, around people, around financial performance, those sorts of things. One part that we play is not getting that all on the table in one big bundle. It's about dealing with succession stuff, and those things are done at the right time.
So your company, Coach Approach Rural, doesn't necessarily just do succession planning. You do a whole range of different things, or is your speciality?
Out of the succession planning around the family side of things, there's the need to develop leaders and team cultures. So that's the people aspects we also work with. Yep.
Really?
So you've got a son or daughter coming in, and mum and dad have a business that's got 15 staff. You don't learn how to lead and motivate and engage 15 staff just because you've travelled the world for 12 months.
Yeah, and because you're the son.
Yep, so part of the succession planning process is identifying a development plan for those people. And it's about professionalising the business, the family business. So that if you want to be a director, you want to be a trustee, you want to aim to be the operations manager, here's the attributes, here's the job description, here's the skills. When you can demonstrate, son or daughter, or son-in-law, daughter-in-law, that you are ready for that, then you'll have the right to put your hand up to be employed.
I guess that's another reason why starting in the 20s with the kids is a good thing, because they can learn that stuff if they suddenly realise, gosh, I do have a place in this farm business. I never thought I did, because I don't like sheep or I don't like cattle, but you know what I mean. And so that the earlier period gives you the chance to, I guess, retrain or train.
Yeah, they're very capable of this next generation. Yeah, they've learnt how to think. It's not so much about the knowledge of what, it's about how, and they certainly bring that in bucketfuls.
And working with families overseas, we sort of discussed that, I suppose. But obviously, internet technology and social networking, all those sort of things come into play a bit too. But probably always the old air ticket's not a bad idea.
Well, if the air ticket is going to cost $2,000 or $1,000 to get someone back for a family meeting, that's pretty critical for the whole $50-60 million business and everyone's welfare and well-being going forward. Well, yeah, put that into context. Yeah. But yes, we've had family meetings where we've got the daughter, son sitting on Skype on the big screen at the end of the table. Yeah, that can work. Mm.
So what, for farmers watching this and thinking, God, I've got to attack this thing. What attributes should they be looking at in terms of a business like yours or a facilitator?
What farmers tell us they like is our independence. We're not emotionally involved or financially involved in their business. And make no bones, we don't have any issues with saying the right messages when they need to be said, because we don't have to get up the next morning and have breakfast with them. But if the message is right, then that'll help with the awareness of what's next. So that independence is a key part.
And what about the cost involved? I mean, is it an hourly rate for you guys, or do you have a sort of a set fee for?
Yeah, hourly rates suck, so we don't go there and induce this clock watching. So we work on a set fee basis from the start through to the end of the second family meeting. Second family meeting is critical because at the first one, a whole lot of emotions, a whole lot of insights, a whole lot of new understanding comes out. People digest on that, and then they can move a lot quicker with when we get together for the second meeting.
Yeah. And then what about the second meeting? What happens then?
Yeah, agree on what the next steps are going forward. So there's a big accountability piece in this, and we encourage families to have at least a minimum of one full family meeting per year just to discuss the succession stuff.
And I suppose you've got to get over all the sort of, just the niceties and then the family dynamics and somehow work out where the youngest, who's normally the one who sits back a bit probably, and the oldest and is normally the driver.
Yeah, so as a facilitator, when you're going around the room and all the family sharing what's important to them, yes, we will ask the quieter ones to talk first and the loud ones go last.
Really? You work that through, or do you ask them?
You pick it up pretty quickly. Do you? Yeah, and I'd run it past mum and dad first as well too. Yep.
So there's a heck of a lot of work for you guys. There's a heck of a lot of work out there. A lot of families need to be sorted out. Yeah,
they do, and it's quite intense of the process we work through.
You can't obviously have a definitive time, but is there an average sort of time it takes from go to woe?
Oh, without complexities, it's probably a 6-12 month process.
So how do people get in touch? How do they find out about what you do and how they can sort their lives out?
The easiest way is just go to our website, www.ruralcoach.co.nz, and there's information there, and it's got all our team around the country, and you can connect with any one of us.
There must be some major feelings of satisfaction from your point of view, let alone the families who are involved, but when things come right and you get it all done and dusted, you walk away and think, well...
Yeah, hugely so, because I've got family, I've been involved with families and kids, and I know how important it is. And when you get mum ringing up and tears saying thank you, and getting big hugs and things.
Yeah, absolutely. That's priceless for you guys. And of course, the other thing is that you're dealing with something that could be in place for further generations, I presume.
Yes, it doesn't
because it's set up now. Then there's no reason why. Yeah.
So if we make it a normal part of the family and the farm business that you do talk about succession on a regular basis, then that's a big part of our jobs done.
Well, Matthew, it's been great talking with you. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate making the effort to get here. And it's Matthew Pickering, who's the director at Coach Approach Rural Limited. And he'd love to hear from you if you've got this issue. It's got to be sorted, so you go to it. And thank you so much for watching. It's Point of View. We'll have another Point of View at the same time next week.